My name is Lierka Miller, and I'm the chair of the Board of Associates for Whitehead Institute here in New York City. I am absolutely delighted to see a full room here. Many faces that I know, many friends who are with me on the Board of Associates. Thank you so much for your support. Many new faces. I really hope we set you on fire here today, because you have heard already some amazing things that are taking place at Whitehead, and you will hear more. The role of the Board of Associates really is to support the Institute in every way possible. And I want to thank those who are working with me, being part of the family. And for those of you who might be thinking about it, I want you to maybe consider some ideas that, you know, there are many, many ways in which you can support this institution and also spread the word about it. We want to make Whitehead known far beyond Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is one of the reasons why we are in New York. This is our flagship event, our 5th. Every May, we hope to continue this event. But in addition to it, we have multiple other events throughout the year. And so if you have registered for the program, then your email is part of the distribution list, and you will get invitations to other programs. The smaller programs tend to be very focused in terms of their topic, in terms of topics. So if whatever interests you, you can select those. It can be a cancer topic, or autism, or Alzheimer's disease, or infectious disease, or something like that. During our big program, we try to cover much, much more ground. Now, I was going to give you a reason why you should consider supporting Whitehead. And it will not surprise you to hear that I had notes prepared. And then Sylvie completely turned me around. So thank you for that. Because, you know, I wanted to say, so, you know, Whitehead is looking to answer questions of basic biology. Answering questions of basic biology lays the groundwork for uncovering causes of disease. It lays the groundwork for finding therapeutics, for prevention of disease. And because of that, this has relevance for our health, my health, your health, our family's health, the world. But you know what, Sylvie, the key word you said is beauty. This research is beautiful. That is why you're supposed to support it. Now, it is my great, great pleasure to introduce again David Page. You've already met him this morning. He leads the Whitehead Institute as the director. He's a professor of biology at MIT. He is one of those famous Howard Hughes investigators. He has done groundbreaking research in the human Y chromosome. As we, or some of us here know, David's biggest claim to fame to this date is having been interviewed by Stephen Colbert on the Colbert Report. With that, David, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. That's kind. Thank you. All right. Yes, I did not bring my props along this morning from the Colbert Report. Lierka, thank you for that very kind introduction, to which I'll attempt to live up. And Lierka, thank you for all that you have done to rally support for this event and for all things Whitehead Institute here in New York City and beyond. So thank you. And to everybody who's present this morning at this terrific symposium, I want to thank you for supporting the Whitehead Institute and its critically important mission. So, in the next few minutes, I want to take a little different tack. I'm going to assume that some of you have heard me talk about the basic science of this human sex chromosomes before, and I instead want to give you a sort of vision of where I think this might all be going. And if time permits, I will return to the basic science primer at the end, but that's only if time permits. So there's really something I want to share with you all. So first of all, have you heard of the X and the Y chromosomes? Yeah. All right, good. So, females have 2 X chromosomes. Males have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. So the Y chromosome is this wee little chromosome that's found in males, not in females. And though Lyurka was kind enough not to say it, the reality is I've spent more than 3 decades defending the honor of the Y chromosome in the face of innumerable insults to its character and its future prospects. Now, why are you, Letty, you're not supposed to laugh when I say that. And these insults that the Y chromosome has had to endure and that I've tried to defend it against, for whatever reason, the X chromosome has never suffered these same insults. But what I want to tell you is that in the past 2 or 3 years, these 2 most favorite chromosomes of mine, the X and the Y, they've helped me and others to begin to see what I'm going to describe as a future of medical research and how we might get there. So I want to invite you to join with me and bring along your X and Y chromosomes to the journey. And I just want to remind you that we may get to the basic science primer at the end. You got your X and Y chromosomes, or your 2 X's, in every cell of your body. You're just covered with them. So you don't go anywhere. I guarantee you didn't come here this morning without your X's or your X and Y, and you're not leaving here without them. So I invite you to join me and bring along your X and Y chromosomes in seeking to transform the biomedical research agenda and thereby change the way that medicine is taught, change the way that medicine is practiced, change the way that medical research is conducted, change the way that drugs are developed and tested, and transform healthcare outcomes for both females and males. So to cut to the chase, the vision that I want to share with you is a vision of a future where the teaching and the practice of medicine and the conduct of medical research will be grounded in an understanding at a molecular level of the differences and similarities between males and females throughout the body in health and disease. Let me just say it again. So my vision is of a future where the teaching and the practice of medicine and the search for therapeutics will be grounded in understanding at a molecular level, at a chemical level, the differences and similarities between males and females throughout the body in health and disease. Now, as you might say, well, of course, don't we already have that? I'll come to that in a few minutes. So my vision is of a future where we will speak with a deep understanding of a human female biology, of a male biology, and a shared biology. And that we will recognize where male and female cells, tissues, and organs are essentially the same and where they're fundamentally different. And this will transform the teaching and the practice of medicine and the conduct of research. Well, why does it matter? Does it matter? Well, it turns out that diseases manifest differently in females and males. Now, you might say, well, obviously things like prostate cancer, or ovarian cancer. I'm not talking about those cases where it's obvious that the anatomy sets males and females up differently for risk. Heart attacks, for example, have different symptoms in men and women. I was not taught this in medical school. And many other diseases occur with very different incidence and severity in females and males. So for every man with lupus, there are 6 women with the dread disease. For every girl who's diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, there are 5 boys diagnosed. Is this obvious from the anatomy why this should be the case? Not at all. So I believe that these, and perhaps the single most important point I want to convey this morning is I believe that these sex differences in disease have their origins in sex differences in health. that female and male cells, tissues, and organs are different even when they're healthy. And I don't mean just in the reproductive tract, I mean across the body. That there are differences in male and female cells, tissues, and organs even when they're healthy, long before the development of disease. And for these very same reasons, the bodies of females and males may respond differently to therapies, including pharmaceuticals. In fact, we already know of examples of that. But it turns out that the worlds of medicine, education, and research, including pharmaceutical testing, those worlds today are not at all equipped or prepared to deal with the existence of two sexes, male and female. Now, indeed, in studies of the human body, the existence of two sexes has always been treated and viewed as an inconvenience, as a massive inconvenience. And when I say always, I mean always. So let me give you a little history. In the 1500s and the 1600s, when the first students of human internal anatomy were discovering the workings of the heart and the circulatory system, they made their discoveries by dissecting the bodies of executed criminals who were always males. Then someone made a mistake, and they dissected a female cadaver. Wow, they were horrified. The innards were different, at least the internal reproductive organs. The internal genitalia were different from those of males. This was not well received. So for more than 100 years, the earliest textbooks of human anatomy depicted the internal genitalia, the internal reproductive organs of females. They were drawn as if they were those of males, but turned inside out. Or, I should say, turned outside in. I'll let you think about that a little bit. I'm not making this up. There's 100 years of anatomic textbooks. It was just very inconvenient to have two different anatomies. Now, by today, we've figured out that females and males have different internal as well as external anatomies. And those different anatomies are taught and have been taught to every medical student in every medical school around the world for some time. Now, if you're in doubt that your physician or your surgeon has been taught the differences between male and female anatomies, I would strongly encourage you to ask your surgeon about this before you sign the release for him or her to operate on your body, right? You probably wouldn't want to undergo surgery internally if your surgeon wasn't familiar with these differences. But I will claim that with respect to the molecular compositions of our bodies, and with respect to sex differences in those molecular compositions of our bodies, we're still in the dark ages. Today, in the 21st century, we live in the molecular equivalent of the anatomically unisex 16th century. And I'm not making this up. So how then to move to a future where the teaching and the practice of medicine and the conduct of medical research is grounded in an understanding at the molecular level of differences and similarities between males and females throughout the body in health and disease? Well, I'll just give you the prescription. And again, time permitting, we'll get back to the basic science primer. First, we have to recognize, this is kind of the 7 steps. We got to go through the 7 steps. First, we got to recognize that we have a problem. We have to recognize that we are at time zero. Very little has been done. And I should say, I've been beginning to take this story on the road with various audiences of medical specialists. Jim heard me present this in January to the Association of University Cardiologists in Florida. And I think my experience is that there's a deep recognition, actually, when confronted with the problem on the part of academic physicians and such, that we simply haven't dealt with this at all. and we don't teach ourselves, we don't teach our students anything about this. So first, we got to recognize we're at time zero. Very little has been done. Second, we will encourage the research community to undertake, and we at Whitehead will lead fundamental molecular studies of sex differences. So first, we're going to assemble deep inventories of molecular differences between females and males in all parts of the body, simply so that we'll know, just as the anatomists needed to know, we need to know at a molecular level what's the same and what's different between the sexes. Might sound pretty obvious, but it's not a small task. We were just talking about data. It's going to be a lot of data generated. We're going to need to generate and analyze a lot of data to understand at a molecular level across the body the differences in the composition of male and female. And not wanting to limit our comparisons to typical males and typical females, that is XY and XX, we will also learn much from including studies of individuals with a missing sex chromosome or an extra sex chromosome. So Turner syndrome. How many of you have heard of Turner syndrome? Do you know what the sex chromosome composition is? Anybody shout it out? Well, that's actually XO. It's actually a single X chromosome is Turner syndrome. Klinefelter syndrome, males who have two X's and a Y. Turner is actually about 1 in 1,000 girls and women who are XO. Klinefelter is about 1 in 1,000 men who are XXY. It turns out about 1 in 1,000 girls and women have 3 X chromosomes, and about 1 in 1,000 men have 1 X and 2 Y chromosomes. And I will provide more details about the rationale for including XO, XXX, XXY, XYY. I will include more details about the rationale for including them in this enterprise in the second hour of this 20-minute presentation. So, and in parallel, we will lead comparative molecular studies in key laboratory animals on which so much of our biomedical research and our pharmaceutical testing is conducted. I have to tell you that when Rudolph talks about the conservatism at NIH, the other thing that's afoot at NIH is to say, in the future, all medical research should be done simply on human beings, that we shouldn't study model organisms. But it turns out that that perspective at NIH overlooks the small fact that every drug, before it comes to market, is tested in animals. And we know, if we know nothing, or next to nothing, about differences in the biochemical composition of male and female human throughout the body, we know equally nothing about differences between male and females of the model or of the organisms, of the animals that we use routinely in seeking to understand how our bodies work and in testing of pharmaceuticals on the way to market. And I will point out here that the Food and Drug Administration's growing interest in differential responses of males and females to therapeutics may be an important driver here. I had an opportunity just 2 nights ago to share this dialogue with the newly confirmed commissioner of the FDA. And we will also recruit colleagues and collaborate with colleagues who have already dabbled in these questions without necessarily grasping the more comprehensive enterprise that I am describing. So at MIT's Biological Engineering department, Linda Griffith is interested in building artificial livers. And she's already aware of fundamental differences between the male and female liver, but she doesn't understand the underlying biochemical differences. Rudolph has been intrigued by dramatic differences in the reprogramming of ES cells and IPS cells, both human and mouse, that are XX versus XY. We talk about these things periodically. Sort of mysteries, even in the stem cell land, the mysterious differences between XX and XY raise their head. colleagues at Boston's teaching hospitals, and actually at one of the cancer centers here in Manhattan and Harvard Medical School, they're setting out with us to explore differences between male and female cancers, and actually differences between male and female cardiac muscle. We have collaborations recently initiated with scientists at the intramural campus of NIH, on NIH's Bethesda campus, to do much more detailed studies, again, of XO, XXX, XXY, XYY individuals. But wait, there's more than just bringing the scientists together. What I'm describing can provide, I think, an important rallying point for recruiting smart, creative, and ambitious young individuals, both men and women, to join the biomedical research enterprise, addressing another critical need in biomedical research, that is bringing on the next generation. And I'm excited to say that in the last year, I've had two spectacular postdoctoral fellows come to my lab specifically to be pioneers in this space, in this area of coming to understand sex differences. So momentum to join in this effort is growing among our supporters in this community. I'm pleased to announce that 3 members of our community have already personally committed a total of $6 million to support this broadly collaborative effort to understand sex differences in health and disease. These individuals are Britt Darbeloff, and 2 of the others are in the room, Arthur Brill and Carol Tobin. Collectively, yeah. And I'd say collectively we have our sights set much higher. Conservatively, I would say it's going to require at minimum a $50 million investment to realize the vision that I've shared with you this morning. So I encourage you to join in learning more about this opportunity and in making the case for a comprehensive approach to this opportunity by educating physicians, by educating scientists, educating funders, including the NIH, the pharmaceutical industry, foundations, and forward-looking individuals. So I invite you to join with me and bring along your own X and Y chromosomes in pursuing this fantastic opportunity to transform the research agenda. And we'll know that we have succeeded when we have changed the way that medicine is taught in every medical school, when we've changed the way that medicine is practiced, when we've changed the way that medical research is conducted, when we've changed the way that drugs are developed and tested, and when we've transformed healthcare outcomes for both men and women of all ages. So let's see, how are we doing time-wise here? We've got, okay, I think I'm going to show you just one slide, a couple of 2 or 3 slides. So yeah, you might enjoy some of these. So this is just, now it's back to the primer. So you've already heard me present sort of the vision of where I think we're going. Now I'll sort of back up. This is actually the way, actually some medical school curricula are being changed this way. First you go to the clinics, then you go back to the basic science. So we've now got sort of the vision of where we want to go. I'm going to go back a bit. So just to remind you, in every cell of your body, in every nook and cranny of your body, you got that genome, that set of chromosomes that my colleagues have been talking with you about. So just to remind you, they come in, you got these 22 pairs of matched socks, right? Or some people look at this and they say they're flip-flops. Anyway, you got these 22 pairs of matched chromosomes that are precisely the same in males and females. And why do they come in pairs? Well, you got one of each pair from mom and one from dad. So you got your chromosomes come in pairs. Half came from mom, half came from dad. So everything is nicely matched up until you get to the 23rd pair, which in females is, again, a nicely matched pair. We call those the X chromosomes. But in males, one of that matched pair is replaced by this little fellow, the Y chromosome. And this is true then, this is true at the moment of essentially shortly after fertilization in that first cell that becomes you, and then it is propagated throughout your body as one cell gives rise to many. Okay, so, but I want to tell you that, and I've drawn a lot of attention here to the role of the X and the Y chromosomes in thinking about sex differences throughout the body. But I want to say that there's an even deeper, and this is something I'm just sharing with you, something I have not even had a chance to write down and publish with colleagues anywhere, but it's something I've been musing on a lot. It turns out that if you think that all the differences between males and females reside in this 23rd pair, it turns out that would be a gross oversimplification. Because it turns out that these other 22 pairs of chromosomes carry most of the genes, most of the information required for making either the male or the female body. Okay? So most of the action in ending up with all the differences between males and females is actually on these other 22 pairs. Now, how could that be? Isn't it just a lot tidier if you tell me it's all in the X and the Y? Well, I will, as an illustration, let me turn. We love to think about comparative studies, what we can learn by comparing ourselves with other species. So I will offer up as providing a point of comparison. And Arthur and Carol, this is, I hope you're going to take this message with you, okay? So I'm going to offer up for comparison the turtle. Now, why the turtle? Well, first of all, I show you up here. Some of you may not be very good. When you meet a turtle in the wild, you might not immediately be able to identify it as a male and a female, so I show a pair of turtles mating just to illustrate for you that they know which is which. Okay, and then I show some line drawings. So here is a line drawing of the innards. This is like, I was talking about those anatomy textbooks. This is the anatomy textbook for the innards of a male turtle, and on the right, a female turtle. And the innards of a male and a female turtle are every bit as different as are the innards of a male and a female human being. Right? In fact, you got a lot of the same structures. But turns out the turtle has, anybody know how sex is determined in turtles? Ah. Huh? Well, they lay, yeah, the female lays the eggs. You got that part down, Arthur. Fantastic. All right, right. But no, so the question is, how do you develop as either an anatomic male or an anatomic female? It turns out that turtles have no sex chromosomes. They have no sex chromosomes. They have only matched socks. They have male and female turtles are genetically identical. There are no genes that distinguish a male turtle from a female turtle. They have no X and Y, which is to say that actually the term we'd use, and this is for Rudolph, the existence in turtles, the existence of two sexes is purely epigenetic. In other words, what I mean is that in turtles, the turtles know how to read the same genome two different ways. They got the same instruction book, but male turtles and female turtles read it two different ways. You know what the cue is? It's the temperature at which the egg incubates. So if the temperature is a little warmer, you have the one reading. If the temperature is a little cooler, you have the other reading. Think about that. And when I think back about our chromosomes, we got 22 matched pairs. Those 22 matched pairs of chromosomes, putting our sex chromosomes aside, there is a male reading and a female reading of our 22 matched pairs of chromosomes. We have much to learn about how this works. And thinking about sort of what the turtle has to teach us about male and female readings of the same genome, let me just offer up an artist's depiction of an old familiar story. Okay, so here is Noah's Ark. So let's begin by analyzing Noah's Ark. So anybody want to offer up any general observations? I mean, do we have any students of art history here? Okay, we've got some students of art history. So I'd like you to do a quick analysis of this piece of art. Do you notice anything about the animals as they're entering the Ark? They enter by two. So yeah, and so we got a male and a female of all sorts of species. So I'm going to claim that this idea of animal genomes having evolved to be read in two different ways is a pretty old idea. And in fact, we learned this when we were children. In fact, we took great pride, didn't we? And let's see if we can, do you notice the lion down here? So if any of you are close enough to see, you learn as a child to identify the distinguishing characteristics of a male and a female lion, as depicted here. Over here is the peacock. Right, you got this, in this case, you got this very showy male, the big tail. Actually, it turns out birds, like peacocks, don't actually have X and Y chromosomes. It's the female that has two different sex chromosomes in birds. But still, there are two readings of the same genome. So what I'm going to tell you is across this whole slide, the common theme is male and female readings of the same genome. It's something we learned the first time we were told this story. And every time we take our children to the zoo or to the farm, we begin to learn about, oh, wow, about this thing. And here I'll point out, frolicking out in the water, you see these alligators or crocodiles. It turns out alligators and crocodiles are like turtles. They have temperature-dependent sex determination. Yet it looks like they're preparing, perhaps as something of a threat to the other creatures. They will eventually march onto the Ark here, and so on. I could go on and on. Actually, I think there's somewhere, let's see. In any case, we got a couple snakes up here. So snakes, some of them have sex chromosomes, some of them don't. But in any case, what I'm saying is the generalization, something that we can really take away from nature, is this notion of male and female readings of the same genome. And we will ultimately take that understanding into our whole view of medical education and research. In any case, I think I want to stop there. I've given you a little bit of this is, believe it or not, this is my basic science primer for the morning. Let me stop there and see if you might have any questions in the remaining minutes. Thank you very much. Right. Questions? Yes?
How do they read the same chromosomes differently?
Okay, Sam, great question. So the question is, how do males and females read the same genome differently? Well, so there's something that in our field has been called sex determination. It's a chapter. It's the title of a chapter in every developmental biology textbook. In fact, it's in every introductory biology textbook. And what that textbook says is that in mammals, you have either an X and a Y chromosome or two X's. And it works down from there. The idea that I've just been giving you this morning is one that has not at all made its way into the textbook as yet. But what I would say is that I think in the future, the textbook, when it has the chapter on sex determination, is going to start by saying, in virtually all animals, there exist two readings of the same genome. The mechanism by which you choose between those two readings is what we have historically referred to as sex determination. So in mammals, in fact, the X and the Y chromosomes, the presence of a single gene on the Y chromosome, SRY, is an incredibly important trigger. In turtles, I said that temperature at which the egg incubates. But this is only a trivialization of your question. So there really is more profoundly a question of how do you actually set in motion entirely different, somewhat overlapping, but substantially different programs of gene expression in male and female, but from essentially an identical text. How do you take a fundamentally identical text? Now, we could say, well, look, in the world of literature, let's take the Talmud, right? I think there's quite a few people have kept themselves busy thinking about interpreting and reading the Talmud. Okay, so if we can do that, maybe evolution has played with the idea of two fundamentally different readings of our genome over time. So it's a deep, deep question. It's going to keep us and many busy for a long time. Jim.
Mitochondrial DNA and turtles.
Jim, so I think you just made maybe there's a question lurking in there. Jim, you said mitochondrial DNA and turtles.
Which is different in males and females who have X and Y chromosomes.
Well, so turtles have mitochondria just like we do. Of course, we all inherit our mitochondria from our mothers. So maybe this is what you're alluding to. So, but it doesn't look like it. So it looks like, to my understanding, turtles like us get their mitochondria from their mothers. I don't know of evidence to the contrary, but I don't think that is thought to play a role in sort of sorting out how temperature affects the sex determination question. But anyway, we'll continue on that one. I mean, mitochondria are really interesting. We've just been writing some things recently about sort of how you can look back into human history and reconstruct actually the history of our species through the window that's provided by the Y chromosome that's passed down from father to son, and on the other hand through the mitochondria, which is passed from mother. But that's a whole nother story. There was, yes, question here. Yeah.
Just a question of curiosity.
Yeah.
This is just a wonderfully elegant area of research. I'm kind of curious, why didn't it start 20 or 30 years ago?
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic question of why didn't this research begin long ago? Well, I would say, again, that it is the existence of two sexes. I can't really explain it except to say that when I look back across the history of human biology, it is absolutely the case that the existence of two sexes has been viewed as an inconvenience. And I will, just to give you some illustration, so to put it in some perspective, so 2 nights ago, I was keynoting the annual gala for the Society for Women's Health Research. And I had the pleasure of sort of, pointing out the irony that the person who had devoted his entire life to studying the Y chromosome would be the keynote speaker for the Society for Women's Health Research. In large part due to the efforts of that organization together with Bernadine Healy when she was then director of NIH, if we go back to 1990, almost all clinical trials of therapeutics had as their research subjects exclusively men. That was 26 years ago. We are now today, fast forward to today, 52% of the research subjects in NIH-funded clinical trials are women. But that was only the result of a dedicated effort. Now you can say, well, why were women excluded from clinical trials? Well, very simply, because we know that women are crazy. They have periods, and you wouldn't want to have your experiments be messed up by the inconvenience of female biology. I'm not making this up. This is, if you go into neurobiology labs today, where people are doing behavioral studies on rats or mice or monkeys, and you ask them, well, you're studying males and females, right? Say, oh, absolutely not. I wouldn't touch a female in this. The neurobiologists today study males. Why? Because females are crazy. They have ovarian cycles, and we don't want to have this mess up. And I'm not making this up, right? This is, so when I say why today, so there is a deeply ingrained, the existence of two sexes has been perceived as an enormous inconvenience and remains so today. So I could go on and on with many, many more examples of this. It all seems unbelievable. And none of these papers, when they're published, have a little asterisk saying that these conclusions apply only to males, but that's the reality of the situation. So thank you so much for your attention. Right.